Hey everybody, this is Perch. All right, it's this is a silly video, but it's comic store questions, and so I've got a couple of people who wrote in mail, so I've collected two of them up, and I'm hoping you have some too. This is fan participation. Well, you're not a fan of me, but person who listened to this video participation time, and so I'm hoping that you have some questions as well. You can put in the comments below. We'll get to them and maybe do a second video. It's fun. But what are comic store questions? So these are loosely, what that means is absurd, basically absurd things in comics that don't make a lot of sense. Um, well, you'll get the idea as we go through this. And in the comic shop, people would talk slash argue about this for hours, and it was meaningless conversation. Often kind of went in strange directions. It was a little bit like the version of the Marvel No Prize. And the Marvel No Prize was something that when Marvel would make a mistake, a reader could write in and explain why it wasn't actually a mistake. And there's a valid reason behind all of this. Basically, correct Marvel's errors for them. By the way, I used this same description like 3 years ago on this channel. This guy got really intense about how that's not what a No Prize is. No Prize is something else. And I don't know how you want to describe the Marvel No Prize, but that is what it is. I don't know. I'll tell you what. I will. I'm going to go onto Google quickly, and I'm going to tell you what Wikipedia says. So Marvel No Prize is a fake horse. Oh, I didn't mention that part. Basically, Marvel would say you win a no prize, which was you win no prize. And so you would get nothing. But anyway, and then for a while, I think they were mailing out envelopes saying you've won a no prize, and the envelope was just empty. But anyway, Marvel No Prize is a fake or satirical award given out by Marvel Comics to readers. Originally, for those who spotted continuity errors in the comics, the current No Prizes are given out for charitable works or other types of mentorist service to the cause of Marveldom, which is, there's some huge irony to calling, do some charity work or some mentorship work or noble work on behalf of Marvel, and you get no prize. That is on brand for how they treat their creators. Anyway, so the basic statement here, which I think matches what I said, is as the No Prize evolved, it was distinguished by its role in explaining away potential continuity errors, and weren't initially simply identifying the errors. The No Prize was later given out when a reader successfully explained why the continuity error was not an error at all. That's it. Anyway, this is something that's gone on. So comic store conversations or comic store questions are ones that kind of fit into this category where you are making you're basically asking the impossible question and you're speculating on the answer, and usually they're absurd questions. And kind of to the point, this always highlights for me why you shouldn't take comics entirely seriously. It is why, we as fans, as people who read comics, we absolutely care about how things look, and we care about these things. And continuity errors could be irritating, but they can't be lifelong crusades. You can at some point just simply roll your eyes and say, that's stupid or that's comics. It doesn't diminish the fact it's an error. But if you get kind of bent around where 5 years later you're still bitching about some of this stuff, I don't know. Anyway, let's read this mail. Two mails. All right. Couple questions, says the letter writer. Let's have some fun. I heard these questions while I worked in a comic store. Okay. Question number one. Ready? And you guys, hopefully you have some answers to these two. Question number one. Does She-Hulk do the She-Hulk or Hulk farts? Can they kill someone of the radiation, or is the sound blast more deadly? I don't do they fart radiation? I don't I wouldn't think so. Otherwise, them just walking around would be. I mean, I know there's a storyline around being in proximity to the Hulk gave people gamma poisoning, but that was over an extended amount of time. A concentrated fart, would that give poisoning? I don't think so. So I don't think that deadly. And the sound blast could be deadly, but my belief is that as really, really fat people fart, it goes more in the silent but deadly category, which means if you're talking about a giant Hulk ass farting, even a muscular Hulk ass, I don't believe that thing is going to I think more than half the time that thing's going to come out silent. So I don't know. This feels like something that Marvel should explore in a Infinite comic around Hulk's farts. It could be their answer to the Harley Quinn farts book, and you could do that. I would think the bigger danger with Hulk farting would be just the pressurized blast of wind potentially could actually pierce steel. I think that would be the bigger concern. Anyway, Hulk farts, She-Hulk farts. Which is the most deadly aspect of those farts? Somebody's going to say the smell, but I don't know. Are we led to believe that the smell would be any better or worse than anyone else's? You just get more of it, potentially. Anyway. All right. Question number 2. We'll see what track we're on. Now, hopefully you understand what we're going for here. Question number 2. Can Luke Cage squeeze a pimple out? This one came out in my shop too, and I remember an argument over this one, and because Luke Cage has the unbreakable skin. So the answer is no. He can't. I don't think he can squeeze a pimple out. I also don't think he would get pimples, because I think the fact that it's unbreakable skin means I think all that kind of pus is just kind of going to collect up under there. I don't know. Does he do oils and things on the skin kind of penetrate to the point that you get pimples on Luke Cage? I think he neither gets pimples nor could squeeze one out. That's where we're going with there. This is related to a different question that I remember getting, which is, what about Luke Cage's eyes? So he has unbreakable skin, but his eyes are not skin. So therefore, if you just blasted him in the face, wouldn't it it wouldn't have popped his eyes out, and then he'd be left with blind but unbreakable skin. Like, at what point, like how and is it skin? Like, could you get into his mouth, and God help us, through his ass? Like where at what point does Luke Cage go from being unbreakable to vulnerable? I wish badly was with me answering these questions right now is Jeff Thorne, because I feel like he would really know the answers to a lot of these, or have a very distinct opinion on this one. That he'd be hilarious doing this bit with. All right. Question number 3. How many nuts can Squirrel Girl hold in her cheeks? I mean, 2, unless it's the Hulk, right? I don't. Squirrel Girl is a mystery to me. It was always kind of odd to me that Marvel tried to make that work. And if you remember, they were doing the Squirrel Girl comic where it was very kind of silly, cutesy, almost YA style comic, and then you had her showing up in the Avengers. The new Avengers as the nanny for Luke Cage, and they kind of insinuated that she used to fuck Wolverine, and it didn't mesh well with the other book, because in the other book she's like, I think, going to college and kind of just doing her thing, and then the idea that she was hot nights with Wolverine felt puzzling. Let's just say that. I don't know. It's cognitive dissonance. It doesn't work. Anyway, how many nuts could she hold her mouth? I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard that one. But I'm going with 2. Yeah, I'm just gonna be dirty there. Okay. Number 4. Invisible Woman can make her body invisible, but what about the digested food, or even when she is pregnant? Aren't we supposed to see all of the external things in her body? This question, it was another one that was talked about a lot in comics, and I think the basic consensus that people got to was basically her invisibility meant that the skin that surrounded her, basically her body, meant that if something entered her, don't get dirty, but like food, that it would be part of that zone, so you wouldn't see the undigested food because it would be at that point interacting with her body. This would explain away why it's her hair, her skin, her clothes. There was an explanation in one of the Fantastic Four comics about why her clothes turned invisible, and the fact that Reed Richards did some science and got the clothes figured out. But I'm curious. I don't know. I like I said, the basic consensus was that the invisibility actually created a bit of a zone around her that would make her invisible. But if that's true, then couldn't people hide behind the Invisible Woman and also be invisible? Or how does that work exactly? When you look at her, wouldn't you see a void if she was, or is it just what's contained inside of her. Anyway, I lots of questions there. It does mean being invisible, having sex with Reed Richards could be really weird on so many fronts. So that would be a problem. Anyway, but why? What is the story there? I don't get hours of conversation were had at the shop with this. Fifth question: how can the blob wipe? He can't. That's it. That's the answer. You know, let the implications settle in on you. He cannot. Um, that's what we have. So that's one mail. Let me quickly go to the second mail, um, which is similar level of mentality here. Question number one: um, when in metal form, what kind of shits does Colossus have? Meaning, is that coming out metal, or and then also is like how's that working? My answer to all this was, but it's a flawed answer. I remember this. I remember this one in the store as well. It's basically, how does he pee? Does he pee like liquid metal, or what's going on? Um, my answer is, he doesn't go to the bathroom in metal form. He goes back to human form when he's wanting to go to the bathroom. Um, but as somebody pointed out, I remember there was that storyline during the Mutant Massacre where he's kind of trapped in metal form, and if he's and so is he like holding it in for year, and for that matter, what's actually going on under the metal body of Colossus? Like, are the organs in there, and how would that work if basically being metal and being tossed around? You would think that his internal organs would just be smashing up against steel, and I mean, his whole inside of his body would get wrecked unless they were also metal. But if they were metal, like, how's the heart functioning, and like what's the blood at that point? And I mean, we've seen different comics where he's cut and he bleeds, and we've also seen things where he cuts and it's like he's a robot. So which what is the protocol there for old Colossus? Anyway. And then the second, the final question we've had is, you know, when Kitty Pryde phases, wouldn't she just fall through the planet? And that brought up a lot of other questions too, like, does gravity affect Kitty Pryde, when she's in her phased form? Probably not, but then, what is, how does that work? And I remember as a kid thinking about this too, is she'd phase her way through floors, but that seems like it would take an immense amount of control. And how is gravity affecting her? She dropped down, but how, again, like, how is she doing that? Is she just swimming through air because gravity doesn't affect her in her phased form? And how does she know how to, stop phasing and come back up? And if she got a lot of momentum, like we've seen her like thrown by Colossus, and she's phased through things, and then she snaps back the last minute, but that's a lot of timing. I mean, it's just that feels like a complex exercise from Kitty, but how does that even work? And then if she's phasing, kind of the more childish version of this question, what happens again to the undigested? A lot of people worry about the undigested food, but what's happening to that food and other parts in her body? Is it just falling out of her, or how does that work? Anyway, all questions that do not really need answers, but what are yours? Let me know your crazy comic questions, and also, if I want to take a run at any of these questions, like, how many nuts do you think Squirrel Girl can fit in her mouth? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks for listening.